Welcome back to the Barrel Talk Podcast. We are back with another episode of Let's Talk About It. We are in the final week of the NBA season. Playoffs and the play-in are right around the corner, so I'm going to be breaking down my top 25 players in the NBA this season. Not in general, just based on this season. The list is based on, in my opinion, just trying to have some fun with it. We can get right into some honorable mentions that I did have. Had Bam Adebayo as an honorable mention. DeJounte Murray has an honorable mention. J-Dub, Jalen Williams is an honorable mention. Victor Wembanyama as an honorable mention. Those are just the four. You can name off probably 20 other players that should be honorable mentions with how much talent is in the NBA right now at this point in time. But going into the list, we can start out with 25. I have Damian Lillard averaging about 24, 4, and 7 this season. It's kind of been an up and down year for the Milwaukee Bucks. And before I go into that, based on my list, I'm basing it off of somewhat of what I've seen from you with my own eyes, taking in some stats. Not so much team success. It's a little bit in there in between, but more so basing it off of what I've seen this with my own eyes and what have you done in past seasons compared to this season's, especially in kind of like what you have meant to your team this season as well. So 25, Damian Lillard, the Bucks have had really up and down season. They're starting to kind of fall apart a little bit. It seems like in the middle half, post All-Star break, I thought they were getting it together a little bit more. But, I mean, they've lost like 6 out of their last 7 games. Had some bad losses to like Toronto, Washington, Memphis. Games that really should have had them lock up the 2 seed in the East. Have kind of put that up for grabs and up for jeopardy. Possibly get them a tougher matchup in the first round. We'll see what happens. But Damian Lillard, this season alone, looking at his transition from being in Portland his whole career to the Bucks, I did expect some kind of drop-off in numbers compared to his time in Portland where he was the number one option. He was the go-to guy. And certain times, I've seen him still be the number one option on this Bucks team, but Giannis being the best player, his stats are going to take a little bit downtick, especially from his time at Portland where he was really the only option these past couple of years in Portland, especially when he was healthy. But looking at it now, even with just the stats taking a downtick, just being in a new city and on a new team compared to him being on Portland for his whole career and being the guy there, Milwaukee's definitely been kind of rough this first year there. I do think it will end up getting better, especially if they keep him and Giannis together. I don't think this is going to be a one-year experiment. But looking at it, they've had a coaching change from Adrian Griffin to Doc Rivers. I still feel like Damian Lillard has been consistent and very good in the clutch. He's been that clutch scorer that Milwaukee has been wanting, that explosive scorer that Milwaukee has kind of been. This is a team that won a championship a couple years ago, but they haven't really had that explosive offensive piece that has really been able to complement Giannis. I just think in terms of this season, it really shows how talented the league is. Damian Lillard is a consensus, in my opinion, not just based on this season, top 10 to 12 player in this league. But just off this season, I do think there's players that have been better. Number 24, Zion Williamson. Now, he kind of had a little slow start to the year, but this is the version of Zion we are getting, and especially in this kind of around, I want to say, like Christmas, January time up until this point in the season. This is the Zion Williamson we expected coming out of college. This is a Zion Williamson that looks like he's in shape. He's dominant, especially without Brandon Ingram. We're seeing more of like a point forward kind of Zion that I've been liking to see. I feel like his playmaking has definitely gotten better throughout the years in his career. And it's just like him being in shape, I feel like has been more of his game. So if Zion's in shape, he's going to be able to just last longer. It makes sense. He'll be able to be more physical, that's his game. Get downhill, be able to finish over anybody in the league, and also be kind of a rim protector and a force defensively that I know he can be. He's kind of really putting it all together. Pelicans looking good to the end of the year. And with him kind of really, this is the best I've seen Zion look in his career. And with what they have building, it sucks that B.I. got hurt. But with B.I. getting hurt, we might see kind of how roles flipped in the playoffs. When Zion was hurt and it was B.I., B.I. have a monster first round series. They ended up losing to the Suns that year, but B.I. was a monster. He was a problem. And it makes you think of those questions on if this team is healthy. Like, I don't know when Brandon Ingram's going to be back. If he does come back, I definitely want to see them make a deep run. But Zion, I'm expecting Zion to have a monster first-round series, playing game, whatever they fall in the standings. I'm expecting Zion Williamson to really be that force, and that's why I have him at 24. This is the best I've seen him looking. You can argue for Damian Lillard and Zion to be a little higher, but I just think Zion, this little spurt, I think if we saw this for a full season, then we can talk MVP conversations like he's projected to be coming out of the draft in his first couple years in the league. 23, Paul George averaging about 23, 5, and 3. 23, 5, and 3. When I'm thinking of Paul George, the narrative is always shaking. I'm a Paul George fan, but I think this is a perfect spot for him on my top 25. Looking at him, he's a flawless player. There's nothing Paul George doesn't do, especially even getting kind of into the latter half of his career. Looking at him still have no holes in his game, offensively or defensively. You kind of know what you're getting from Paul George at this point. He's a perfect complement to Kawhi, even with the addition of James Harden. He's kind of really been able to find his role and find his way. I feel like is the X factor for the Clippers moving forward. But just looking at him this season, he's always going to be super efficient. You know what he's giving you defensively. You know what he's giving you offensively. He's giving you the full package. Whatever the Clippers need, they need a go-to guy down the stretch without Kawhi. You give it to Paul George and get out of the way. They need a guy who can go get a stop on another team star player. You give it to Paul George. You give him the assignment, especially if Kawhi's not there. He's basically just an extension of Kawhi, and he's been playing efficient all year. He's has a team that's locked up the 4 seed. Him being the second best player, I have him put right here. Got to give love to Paul George for somebody who gets a lot of hate around the league. 22, Jaylen Brown. Now, coming into this year, a lot of questions about Jaylen Brown based on just that playoff series against Miami last year, but this is probably the most complete season I've seen from Jaylen Brown, both on offense and defense for the Celtics. And I also think that's because he's not trying to do too much. He knows the team he has and what they have with Jrue Holiday, Derek White, Porzingis, and Tatum. I feel like he's really settled in to his role with the Celtics moving forward, especially because they just signed Jrue Holiday. So this team is probably going to be together for at least another 2 to 3 years. So looking at what he's done this year on both sides of the ball, I think it's been very impressive to see, because Jaylen Brown, in my opinion, has been a player that can kind of get a little OC and do a little too much. I haven't seen that this year with Jaylen Brown, especially in the games that I've watched. He looks very controlled. He's somebody that thrives in transition. If Boston's playing fast, he's out on that break. He's dominating. He's a great defender, especially on the ball. Maybe not so much off the ball, but on the ball, he can clamp down when needed. And I think he's a perfect complement to Tatum. That's the point. I think him, like kind of in the trend right here, at least these 4 guys, I feel like are perfect complements to maybe the 1A on this team. Jaylen Brown fits perfectly as a 2 option. If he's a second option to give you 23, 5, and 3, and these are down numbers from last year because of the addition of Kristaps and a Jrue Holiday, this is just fine. He's playing his role perfectly, and I feel like this is the perfect fit for Jaylen Brown, and this is the best I've seen from Jaylen Brown so far in his career. 21, Tyrese Haliburton. You could argue him to be higher. You could. Since start of the year, came out firing, put the Pacers to the in-season tournament finals, lost to the Lakers. He was hooping. I mean, I'm talking 27, 28, and 10, 12, any given night. Got hurt. They traded for Pascal. He's kind of been on the downwards slope of kind of this back half of the season. Getting healthy, gearing up for the playoffs. They're currently, I believe, the 6th seed. But looking at him this entire year, it was more so, if he played like that, how he's at the start, and say he didn't get hurt and played like all year, then you're having completely different conversations. You're talking somewhere top 8, top 6, somewhere in that realm. Because Tyrese Haliburton at the start of the year came out of the season hot, and then due to the injury, I feel like he was kind of playing hurt, which kind of hurt his stats a little bit, because he was playing hurt because he's averaging 23 and 10. Looking at what he's done, I feel like he was playing through injury to make the games played mark so he can get his money. That's a big thing of why I think his stats and why he went into a slump in the first place, because he was forcing himself to play through injury to make the games played mark, because he's going to be up for a huge extension. But for Tyrese Haliburton, still a phenomenal season. I mean, the Pacers haven't been this relevant since Paul George was there. So looking at this, they have their guy, franchise guy. You add in Siakam. They haven't been really great. Give it time. You got to give great things time to work out. Tyrese Haliburton, still a phenomenal season, even though the back half of the season hasn't been the greatest. But I have him up here and up to 21 because I feel like that first part, he was just so good in that first stretch of the season. And he really had the league on fire in a way. So looking at 21, I think it's a great spot for him. Looking at 20, Tyrese Maxey. Now, been great all year. He's giving you 25, 3, and 6. He really kind of held it down when Joel Embiid went down. I know they lost a good amount of games, took him out of like the top 3 seed, but with him and what he was doing as a number one, still putting up great numbers, being the number one, being doubled on most nights, it's really impressive to see, especially as he grows into, in my opinion, a number one option, potentially. But the reason they kind of lost a lot of those games is you're just not replacing Joel Embiid's 35 a night. You're not replacing an MVP caliber player, especially for how long he was gone, and for Maxey to really keep them afloat and keep them fighting in the middle of that Eastern Conference, which is kind of getting a bit messy right now. But what he's been able to do, he's going to be the MIP. We saw this coming from last year without James Harden. Tyrese Maxey has completely been a phenomenal number 2 next to Joel Embiid, and even when Joel Embiid was out, he was still phenomenal. So I think 20, perfect spot for him. And the reason I have him kind of over Tyrese Halliburton is just more consistent throughout the entire course of the year. I know Tyrese Halliburton didn't get hurt, but Tyrese Maxey, consistency throughout the entire year. That's why I got him at 20. Now, looking at 19, like I said, just based off this season, Devin Booker, 27, 5 and 4. I feel like 5 and 4. I feel like he's just he's having a good year in terms of what I'm seeing from Devin Booker, but in terms of he's kind of changed his role into being just the point guard for the Suns because they don't have one outside of him. Bradley Beal's been okay, being, I guess, the playmaking point guard, but it really goes through Devin Booker. Everything on this team goes through Devin Booker. It's been a very up and down season for the team. Devin Booker's still going to always get his, but in terms of what I've seen, I feel like he's just really changed his role. And I feel like at times he's still kind of trying to find his way in his role. I think he's been phenomenal being the point guard, especially for a player that his development doesn't get talked about enough. When you're looking at Devin Booker when he came to the league out of Kentucky, he was more of a catch-and-shoot, spot-up shooter, probably a spark plug off your bench. And then he transitioned into being a good 3-level scorer. Then when Chris Paul and they put all the pieces together, he was able to be the best player on a team that went to the finals. And then you're looking at the other side of this now, in this post kind of new era of the Suns already with this big 3. He's the point guard. He's the facilitator for everybody. So I do feel like this season's kind of been a little bit of a step back because he's trying to transition and find his way in this new role because they don't even have a bench point guard. So everything on this team is going through Devin Booker. And I feel like there's some times where he kind of doesn't be aggressive enough at times, and more so resorts to giving the ball to Bradley Beal and giving it to Kevin Durant. But if this team had a point guard, you see Devin Booker only tripping about scoring because he wouldn't have to worry about facilitating for this person and that person getting this person involved. I feel like that's kind of the point that's kind of had him have an up and down season. Same with the Suns. I mean, I just think they're just an incomplete roster in general, which kind of hurts Devin Booker in a way because I feel like he's just out of his position. He's been fine as a point guard, but Devin Booker has a 2 is just better with him than him as a 1. And I feel like that's why I got him at 19. 18, listen, based off this season, give me Paolo Banchero. He's the most untalked about young star I've seen in forever. 22, 6 and 5 on a team that has limited, zero shooting basically at all, fighting for the 3 seed in the East with that young of a roster. And he is the focal point. And this team, when I tell you this team can't shoot, they have barely any shooters on the roster at all. Paolo Banchero got them fighting for the 3 seed. This young of a team, this would be going into the process when you're looking at the Orlando Magic. Oh, they could be fucking around in the plan. They're the 3 seed, Eastern Conference, fighting for it. They're almost fighting for the 2 seed. They got Milwaukee 2 times this week. So Paolo Banchero being, I think I could argue him to be higher. Just based off this season. For him to be that young, not getting talked about, 22, 6 and 5, being a dog, game really progression. There might not be a huge uptick in numbers from last year, but you can see he's definitely taken a step and has grown since last year. And to have this Orlando team really fighting for playoff position, and with the way they defend, I know they ain't shooting the ball that great of a clip, but the way they defend and the way the game slows down in the playoffs, who knows what they can do in the playoffs. Because they got the makeup to really bother some teams with that defense they got over there. 17, Donovan Mitchell, 26, 5 and 6. Now, I'm a person that has kind of really started the season, and with the Cavs dealing with a bunch of injuries, looking at a Donovan Mitchell, I had him getting MVP love. No Garland, no Mobley. They had a crazy 20-game stretch that really kept them in the top of the Eastern Conference. And then he's been dealing with some injuries. The Cavs have just had some crazy injuries, and it's really impressive to see how they've fought through these injuries and really been to that point in the season. Because at that point, I was like, man, no Garland, no Mobley for like a grip. It would have made sense if the Cavs would have slid to the play, and Donovan Mitchell, playing like an MVP level player, kept them in the top 6 of the Eastern Conference. And I was getting ready to give him some MVP love, but he has been dealing with a ton of injuries throughout this back half of the season, trying to get healthy and ready for the playoffs. But I feel like this Cavs team has been riddled with injuries. That's kind of hindered them, because if they've been healthy all year, then you're really looking at like, damn, this team would probably be the 2 seed. But with all the injuries they've had, it's great that they've been able to keep it afloat. Donovan Mitchell's been a huge part of that. And Donovan Mitchell, he's going to take this team. Well, the Cavs are going as far as Donovan Mitchell takes them. They're not getting any farther until Donovan Mitchell takes them there. That's what I've just seen with the Cavs this season. He is the focal point. Without Donovan Mitchell, this team's unserious. That I feel like 17 could be a little low, but I feel like it's just right, because looking at the entire season, like I said, he has been dealing with some injury problems, which is kind of just taking him out of games, taking him out of the lineup for a grip. But the middle part of the season, where they went on that 20-game stretch, Donovan Mitchell was being that dude. I feel like 17 is a great spot for him. Now, 16, Kyrie Irving. 25-5-5, secondary next to Luka. I mean, I feel like when you think of Kyrie in the past couple of years, you think of all the distractions and all the bad shit. Then I feel like that takes away from what he's doing on the basketball court. People forget how good Kyrie Irving is. Like, Kyrie Irving is a top guard in this league. With all the distractions, I feel like some people have taken away from that. But looking at what they've done, especially all season, there ain't been no distractions. Kyrie's been hooping next to Luka, especially on this last stretch. Dallas is not a team you want to see in the playoffs, especially where I feel like the chemistry is finally meshing and finally working together, especially with the deadline acquisitions they did get. P.J. Washington, Daniel Gafford have been great fits. But Kyrie's been consistent all year. All year, Kyrie's been consistent. I feel like this is the Kyrie and Luka that we have been expecting and been exciting for. But Kyrie Irving, I mean, even in times when Luka's not in there, he's been able to carry the load and win big games. I mean, he had a crazy game winner against Denver. He's been clutch all year. I think Kyrie Irving has been one of the most consistent players all year. But the perfect spot for him at 16. Now, 15 and 14, 2 guys on the same team. 2 guys on the same team. We're going to go. They're kind of interchangeable just because they're on the same team for me. Sabonis at 15, De'Aaron Fox at 14. Kind of got to talk about them both at the same time. This is a little segment about the Kings, I guess. Looking at Sabonis and saying he's a double-double machine, for him being a big that doesn't really space the floor that much, for him to be somebody that really is an offensive hub in today's game without spacing the floor, it's really uncommon. He's really a one-of-a-kind in today's game right now, because he can be an offensive hub without shooting the 3 at a crazy clip or being flashy or anything else. He's an old-school big who's going to be dominant in the rebounding game. He's going to be dominant down low in the paint. The handoffs and the screens and the playmaking ability is elite. And then with De'Aaron Fox, I feel like I've seen his jump shot grow every single year. I feel like he's finally starting to find that balance between when to shoot him and when to get to the cup, because he's one of the most athletic and fastest players in the league. But with this Kings team, just kind of like tough because they were kind of secured in the top 6 and then had an injury to Kevin Huerter. You can say what you want about that. I feel like he's a very important piece because he provides them spacing, and that handoff game between him and Sabonis was really a good thing that got their offense going. When Fox was having an off night, Malik Monk's having an off night, they could always go to the Kevin Huerter Sabonis handoff game, and it was money. And then another injury to Malik Monk recently. That's your whole 6-man off the bench who's been huge for them all since he's been in Sacramento. And then it's really been Fox and Sabonis consistently all year, carrying the load, carrying this team. And I feel like they've both been having an underrated season, and they both deserve to make an All-NBA team, especially Sabonis because of its being positionless. He's going to probably get snubbed out. Sucks to say, but it being positionless in the All-NBA category, he's probably going to get snuffed out. And then, with wrapping it up with De'Aaron Fox, I feel like he's probably the most disrespected guard in the league at this point in time. I just feel like when you're bringing up the best guards in the league, you don't bring up De'Aaron Fox. Like, De'Aaron Fox is 26, 4, and 5. Like, he is like that. But when you bring up the best guards, I feel like he never gets brought to the table. Like, he's the best guard. He's the best player on a team in the Western Conference, and we know how tough and loaded the Western Conference is. And he has a Sacramento team with injuries to two really key starters, even though Malik Monk comes off the bench, keeping this team afloat. Like, when best guards get talked about in the league, De'Aaron Fox needs to consistently be brought up every time. And I feel like his name is never, ever brought up whatsoever. I feel like he's one of the most disrespected guards I've seen in the league in the past couple of years. But that's 15 and 14 going into 13. Kevin Durant. I feel like this is a perfect spot. I don't think this is too low. It really shows how the league is growing and developing and how good of seasons guys are having above him. But 13, perfect spot for Kevin Durant. I feel like all around he's having one of the best seasons of his career. His defense is always going to go under talked about and underrated. His rim protection is really elite for what he does bring. And looking at offensively, the only thing I have really, and kind of just talking about the Suns in general, and I feel like has kind of hindered Kevin Durant and Booker, is just they're just an incomplete team. They're really just an incomplete team when you're talking about the pieces that they need. They don't really have a point guard. They don't really have a defensive stopper on the wings or at the guard position or at the big position. They're kind of lackluster and kind of like their bench, because you never really know what you're getting off that Phoenix bench. The bright spot's been Grayson Allen, but Kevin Durant, he's been phenomenal defensively. You know what you're going to get from him offensively. He's going to be super efficient throughout the game. And the only problem I say why I feel like I have him here is because there's some times where he's not put in great positions to thrive. That also comes with not having a point guard. Like I said earlier, Devin Booker, I feel like, has been great transitioning from a 2 to a 1, but that doesn't mean there can't be better options at that 1 and put Devin Booker back at the 2. Bradley Beal, that trade kind of messed up this team because they can't financially make shit work anymore. And I feel like that has kind of hindered Kevin Durant's season just a little bit, not a crazy amount, that it doesn't put him in spots where he can really succeed because they don't have a point guard. Like, Devin Booker still going to look to get his when needed. Point guard can be like, all right, I can get D-Book in this position or get Kevin Durant in this position, get Bradley Beal in this position to get him an easy look. I just feel like there hasn't been enough easy attention looks for Kevin Durant. I feel like everything's tough with Phoenix. Everything has to be a tough bucket. I don't feel like they get a ton of easy ones. But still, Kevin Durant, 27, 6, and 5 with everything I've just said. Well, I feel like it hasn't been an easy season for anybody on the Suns. 13, I feel like, is a perfect spot for him, especially with how underrated his defense goes. I feel like he has no flaws in his game. He's one of the only players in the league I feel like has no flaws. He can do everything on the basketball court at an elite high level. It's just, I feel like I would put him higher, but I feel like this season has just been so tough just for the Suns in general. He's a part of that. I feel like 13 is a fine spot for him. 12, we got LeBron James. Listen, with his age, 27, 25, 7, and 8, still historically great numbers. I just feel like there's people that have just been having a better season, more consistency throughout the year. But when you're looking at LeBron, you could obviously put him higher, but this is just based off this season. Just based off this season, I feel like 13 is pretty good of a spot for him. And this kind of goes into number 11 as well, which is Steph Curry at 26, 4, and 5 on the year. I feel like Curry, Bron, KD could all be put in a realm where they're higher up on the list, but I'm going to get to talking about this top 10 when we get into it. But looking at what these three have done, we just kind of have to appreciate how the longevity of this, how great they have been, even though all three of these teams are in the play-in. That's not really their fault at all, to be honest with you. But looking at it, these guys are the model of consistency. They're out of the top 10, but I feel like you could argue them, change my mind, put them in the top 10, but I feel like there's 10 guys that are at that upper echelon in the regular season this year that are just above them. But looking at it, model of consistency, that's really all I'm going to touch on. We know what LeBron is, we know what Steph is, we know what Durant is. Like, we know what these three guys are. The longevity and what they've been able to do is impressive, to say the least. But I don't think any three of these guys are playing this season at a top 10 level. Top 10 clip. Getting into our top 10. Looking at it, kind of another guy you can kind of put in that situation, but I got Kawhi Leonard at 10. 23, 6, and 3. Numbers might not be there, up there with like LeBron, Steph, or KD. Got his team at the 4 seed. Been the healthiest we've seen Kawhi Leonard. He's still elite defensively when he needs to be. And he's still elite offensively. Like, him being the force of the Clippers, he's the difference maker. If Kawhi Leonard's healthy, I think they might have beat the Suns last year without Paul George. So when you're looking at this in a realm where I think Kawhi Leonard's impact defensively is the X factor, because he can go out and be like, has the ability to say, Paul George got it going this night, Harden got it going, I'm bunkering down defensively, locking up the other team's best player. And in the recent game, you kind of saw that when they played Philly, and he was able to really clamp down and win that game for him defensively. And they won that game off of kind of a crazy call, but you can say what you want. He clamped down defensively when he needed to. And I feel like him being healthy all year is putting him in the conversation of like he's the best two-way player in the game. Offensively and defensively. He's complete on both sides. His defense is still top-notch in the league, even with him getting up there in age. Yeah, you might not see it consistently night in, night out, but when he needs to, he can sit down and lock up your favorite player. Kawhi Leonard, definitely in the top 10 for me. Number 9, Anthony Davis. Like Kawhi Leonard, been the healthiest stretch of AD's career since they won the bubble championship. But looking at it, 24, 12, and 3, looking at it, he should probably be in Defensive Player of the Year categories, because you saw Golden State against the Lakers. Without AD, that defense is just... He is that Lakers defense. He's the backbone of that defense. And really, they haven't really had the defensive players around him to really ease his job up. But he's been an elite rebounder, great scorer. He's the most important player for the Lakers. He's the most important player. Without him, everything falls apart. You still have Bron, but without him, your whole defense falls apart. And with him being that big of a rim protector, it's huge. I think he should get some Defensive Player of the Year love. I know it's going to Rudy Gobert. Timberwolves are fighting for the 1 seed. They've been the best defense throughout the entirety of the year, but I just feel like a little stuff better than Rudy Gobert does. I think Rudy Gobert is just the best pure rim protector, but I think Anthony Davis, when it comes to switching onto a guard, being able to stunt and help, and just movement-wise over the court, I feel like defensively is better than Rudy Gobert. But I just feel like Anthony Davis is the most important player on the Lakers. Should get some Defensive Player of the Year love, because I feel like he's their most important piece, even with LeBron James. And I feel like this is the first year where you've really seen Anthony Davis be the best player on the Lakers compared to LeBron James, even though LeBron James had been a phenomenal year. Going in to number 8, Anthony Edwards, 26, 5, and 5. In my opinion, when Karl-Anthony Towns went down and got hurt, you could really kind of guess and see. It was like, okay, I could see the Wolves slide into like 4, 5, 6 margin, because that's just a big offensive piece that with a team that struggles with offense. Even though Naz Reid's been good, Karl-Anthony Towns is a 50, 40, 90 as a big. So looking at what Anthony Edwards has been able to do at his age, being able to fight for the 1 seed, looking at his numbers, looking at the more so kind of with Tyrese Halliburton, bringing the Wolves back into kind of this relevancy, I just feel like it's huge. And I feel like he's having a monster fucking year. And I'm excited to see him have a monster playoffs. But looking at what he's been able to do, I feel like he's instilled this culture with the Wolves. They're gritty, they're tough, they're nasty defensively. They might not be the best offensive team, but when you're looking at him, everything goes through him down the stretch of games. Everything goes down through him down the stretch of games. And I feel like him just instilling this culture with Minnesota this year, I feel like has been huge, especially from this young of a player. He's a superstar in the making. Anthony Edwards, with what he's been able to do this year with this Timberwolves team, and even with Karl-Anthony Towns going down, being able to keep them afloat, top 3 in the Western Conference, super impressive. That's why I got to have him at 8. But looking at number 7, Jason Tatum. He let me down. I remember I came over here about a month ago on an episode of Let's Talk About It, talking about Jason Tatum being the most disrespected star in the league. Got killed in the chat for it because Jason Tatum went along to follow that with 3 straight bad performances. 3 straight bad performances. The second after I dropped that video. The second after I dropped it, I got killed in all my group chats for it. But looking at it, Jason Tatum still having a phenomenal year. 60-plus win team. Number 1 in the Eastern Conference. Has been dominating throughout the entire season. 27, 8, and 5 is even a downtick in them kind of numbers from last year's numbers. With the addition of KP, Drew Holiday, like I said, with Jaylen Brown. Looking at Tatum, still, I feel like everybody wants to have this kind of narrative of people pick and choose. Kind of in that Let's Talk About It, I talked about how, I think it was Draymond Green had the comments about how he's not going to win MVP till he wins the title because of the narrative that's been around him and his early success. But I feel like when you're looking at the main point this year, people always want to point at the clutch moments and everything else and the shot selection and this and that. I feel like it's more can go into a team aspect. Not saying Jason Tatum hasn't been clutch, because there's some points where he hasn't been. I feel like people only look at the bad and not the good. Look at the good. Jason Tatum, early success in his career. Game 6 in Milwaukee. On the road. Puts up, I think he had like 43 or 46 against Giannis to force the Game 7 where they blew out the Bucks to go to the conference finals. Let's look at a series against the Sixers on the road in Game 6 in Philly. Wasn't that great throughout the game. Came down to winning time. Big bucket after big bucket, big 3 after big 3, forcing the Game 7 where he turns around and then drops 50 on Philly in a blowout game at home. I just feel like people always want to kind of nitpick with Jason Tatum because he's had early success in his career. But I feel like this season he's had to be in the top 8, 61 team, putting up these kind of numbers, still being the best player on that team. Definitely deserves to be in that conversation. Number 6, Giannis. This kind of goes into the Steph, Bron, and KD realm, where I don't really have to go on a spiel of why I have Giannis here. It's Giannis. Hopefully he can get healthy for the playoffs, because I've been seeing a lot of KD kind of comparisons to his injury with the calf, and then the calf turned into the Achilles, and then with his game is opposite of Kevin Durant. So they need to kind of prioritize making sure he's healthy and ready to go. Don't need to be forcing him to play games and everything else like that. I'm resting him. Playoff start, not this upcoming Saturday after that, and that's even if they play that Saturday, because they might play that Sunday. But looking at it right now, I don't have to explain why Giannis is a top 6 player in the league this season. Numbers speak for itself, 30, 11, and 6. Hopefully he gets healthy for the playoffs and they can make a run. At 5, I don't know if I'm going to get kicked for this or not. This is my list, so I'm going to talk my shit. Jalen Brunson. Yep. 28, 3, and 7. Let me just paint the picture for why Jalen Brunson's here. At his size, he's 6 foot. No bigger than 6'1". At his being the hub, offensively, carrying this New York Knicks team. Especially, you lose your third option and your fourth option, RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickley, trade them for OG Anunoby. Not saying it's a bad trade. You give away those 2 options offensively. You bring him in. You bring OG. You're putting the league on fire. Putting the league on Eastern Conference on notice that you're here. OG goes down for a little bit. Julius Randle has a shoulder thing. And now you really don't have options 2, 3, and 4. 3 and 4 went to a trade. And then your option 2 is hurt. And he's out for the rest of the year. Looking at that, could easily been like, okay, damn, that's tough. Knicks probably in the play-in. Right? That's what you're thinking. Jalen Brunson, with what he's asked to do in the minutes played and what he needs to do offensively, everything going through him, this season, there's no list where he should be out of the top 5. There's no list. At his size, 28, 3, and 7, you have to give him his flowers. In my opinion, he's been the best point guard in the league all year, outside of Luka and SGA, which we'll get to. He's been the best guard in the Eastern Conference, hands down. It's not close. With what he's been able to do for this New York Knicks team, phenomenal. Phenomenal. If it wasn't for the 4 people above him and the numbers they put up, Jalen Brunson's This is an MVP caliber season from Jalen Brunson. MVP caliber. But there's just 4 guys above him that are just, like I said, the NBA's, with the talent in the NBA, it's crazy. Because I think Jalen Brunson should deserve MVP love, but then when you look at the 4 above him, you're like, damn. Even Giannis is arguable. Tatum, argue it. Edwards, argue it. I just think Jalen Brunson's just been better. That's basically my take. Jalen Brunson has just been better. But now going into 4, skeptical about putting him here, but he has come back from injury. Looking fine, looking good. Joel Embiid, 35, 11, and 6. Joel Embiid doesn't get hurt. Joel Embiid's walking away back-to-back MVPs, in my opinion. That's how dominant he was. Had the Sixers comfortably in the top 3. Gets hurt. Like I talked about earlier with Tyrese Maxey. Able to keep afloat. Comes back. They haven't lost since. I think they're on like a 6-game win streak. I don't know. In that win streak when he came back, they haven't lost since he's been back. Been dominant. If he stays healthy with their positioning right now, if I'm Boston, Milwaukee at that 1 and 2, I'm like, playing Philly first round, tough matchup. Playing the Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, tough matchup. He doesn't get hurt. He walks away with back-to-back MVPs by far. That's how big of a gap it was before he got hurt in the games mark. That's how big the gap was. Even though he got hurt, people forget Joel Embiid. That's how big the gap was. They were ready to give it to him before he got hurt. He had it wrapped up in the present. Gets hurt. Then he comes back. Still dominating. Probably looking about 80%-ish. And that's still good enough. When you have Tyrese Maxey playing at the level they have, Nick Nurse, this is going to be a scary team going into the playoffs. If Joel Embiid can be anything he was health-wise at the start of this year, listen. Like I said, that's how big the gap was between him, SGA, Luka, and Jokic when it comes to the MVP award. There was a gap. He was walking away with it. Number 3, SGA, 35 and 6, kind of similar to Anthony Edwards in instilling a culture, bringing OKC back to real relevancy. One of the youngest teams. This doesn't happen often, where they're one of the youngest but most dominant in the league. Top 10 offense and defensive team. SGA, I mean, down the stretch is unguardable. You can't stop him. He's always going to get to his spots. He's somebody he's in the realm of a Luka, where like he just doesn't get sped up. You're not speeding SGA up. He's always going to continue to play at his own pace. Him has to be a top 3 player this year. Has to be. MVP race. Feel like he's kind of lost the grasp on that just because he's been out a couple games and OKC's kind of slid a little bit. But doesn't matter for them to be at this point and kind of this OKC team with him being the face of the franchise, to be battling with the Denver and the Timberwolves team, especially a Denver team for this 1 seed, and with what they've been able to do this year with how young they are, gotta give SGA his flowers. I definitely think he's a top 3 player this season. Then 2 people above him. I mean, there's just nothing you can do with these 2 up top. I got Luka Doncic at 2, 34, 9, and 9. I mean, he's an MVP waiting to happen. You really can't do nothing with him. He's had the best, ever since he's gotten to the league, the best defenders can't do nothing with him. We all remember that series in the bubble with Kawhi and Paul George a couple of years ago when they were both healthy. Luka Doncic gave them hell, and it looks like that's going to be the matchup in the first round again this year at that 4-5 matchup. You can't do nothing with him. Y'all know who Luka is. I don't need to go on some spiel about why Luka is the second best player this year in basketball. And like, I don't need to go on a spiel of why Nikola Jokic is the best player in basketball. I've seen Nikola, like, I don't understand. Well, I guess I understand. People don't understand. Like, when Jamal Murray is out of the lineup, Denver still beats very, very, very good teams without their second option. Because Nikola Jokic averaging 26, 12, and 9 with, like, just put up 41 on Minnesota and the Depoy last night. Made it look easy. Think only missed like 4 or 5 shots. Like, with their bench getting weaker, them still being able to hold down the 1 seed is because he is that big of a difference. Like, he is the hub. Everything goes through Jokic. His playmaking is the best of all time at that position. He just does it all. Like, whenever they see somebody go up against him, like a Rudy Gobert or an Anthony Davis, 2 defensive player of the year kind of players that play a little bit differently defensively, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you do. You can't get physical with them. You can't speed them up. he damn near wants you to get physical with him because then he's just going to go to the line. So, like, there's really no answer for Jokic. There isn't an answer for Jokic. If they lose, it's going to be either because of an injury or a team just got wiped out against them. But if this team is healthy and has a Jokic, like, there isn't any defensive scheme you can draw up to slow him down. Like a Luka, like a SGA. These three guys this season have been the most unstoppable players in the league. And Joel Embiid. Unstoppable. There isn't a scheme that you could do to really stop them at all. And I'll even throw Jalen Brunson in that. I've seen them use crazy schemes against Jalen Brunson to try to get the ball out of his hands. And they've great coaching, but he's also been able to counter that. And there has been a way out of the top 5 guys when I'm looking at this season. These top 5 have been the most unstoppable players in basketball. No matter the coverage, the scheme, no matter what day it is, they're producing. That's why they're in my top 5. It doesn't matter who's hurt, who's not. They're producing no matter what. What's going on their team, they are producing. Especially there's been stretches where Jamal Murray has been out. Nikola Jokic ain't tripping about that. Him and Reggie Jackson finna eat. Him and Christian Brown finna eat. Him and Peyton Watson finna eat on this pick and roll. Don't matter. He's gonna get it done. He's gonna go beat high caliber elite level teams without his second option. Make it look easy. Make it look easy. By the time it's all said and done, especially if they win a chip this year, because I feel like Nikola Jokic is going to win MVP if they wrap up the 1 seed. If they get an MVP, another finals, and a finals MVP from Nikola Jokic, we got to start putting him in rare air about one of the greatest peaks we've seen over these past couple of seasons. That would be 3 straight MVPs. Well, it would be 3 total MVPs, 2 finals MVPs, 2 rings within a 4-year span. Those conversations are going to happen if they do it this year, especially back-to-back chips, back-to-back finals MVPs. Those conversations are going to start to come up of him being in rare air. But this is kind of wrapping up my top 25 players just based on this season. Gotta talk about that. Just based on this season, in my opinion. Just kind of having fun with the list. But thank you guys for tuning into the Barrel Talk podcast. Hope you tune in to future episodes.